Mara Linovic gripped the controls of her freighter as it shuddered through Illyris's thin atmosphere. The stars blurred against the cockpit windows, and a sudden jolt sent her heart racing. She fought to steady the ship, but the damaged thruster sputtered to silence. With a final heave, the freighter plunged through violet clouds and struck the soft, mossy ground. Mara's world spun as alarms echoed in her ears. When the noise finally stopped, she sat for a moment, chest heaving before wiping sweat from her brow and pushing open the hatch. The cool air smelled of strange blossoms, and above her, 2 pale moons glowed like distant lanterns. Dressed in a scuffed flight suit and battered boots, Mara climbed out. Around her lay rolling fields of silvery grass that swayed under a gentle breeze. Somewhere nearby, she heard voices soft, melodic, and tinged with curiosity. She followed. The sound, clutching her toolkit and her personal medkit, until she reached the edge of a grand courtyard. Towers of polished stone rose around a crystal-clear lake, and people with pale lavender skin and silver eyes paused to watch her. At their center stood a tall figure draped in flowing robes of midnight blue and soft gold trim. The queen approached. On barefoot steps, her posture serene yet commanding. Silver threads in her dark hair caught the moonlight as she inclined her head. Mara felt a quick pang of awe and nervous excitement. The queen's eyes, bright like starlight, regarded her steadily. "I am Queen Ciara of Ilaris," the alien monarch said in gentle tones that resonated in Mara's chest. "Your arrival is unexpected, but fate has woven our paths together." As Mara offered a trembling bow, she realized that her routine supply run had turned into something far more important. Queen Ciara led her across the courtyard to a raised dais. There an elegant table held vials of glowing liquid and woven circlets of silver. "Our colony below suffers," the queen explained. "Medical supplies are scarce, and my people grow weak." She paused, sapphire-violet tears shimmering at the corners of her eyes. "And by our ancient custom, a temporary partner must stand beside me in ritual. This bond grants the strength we need to protect Ilaris." Mara's throat tightened. Queen made it sound so simple, so necessary an alliance forged in ceremony, not in love. Yet the word partner stirred something deep and unfamiliar in Mara's chest. Though her mind raced with questions, Mara felt a steady warmth spread through her limbs. She thought of the families depending on her deliveries, of the lives she could save with even a few vials of medicine. With a breath that trembled but carried resolve, she nodded. "I will help," she said, voice soft but sure. Queen Ciara's lips curved in a small, grateful smile. 8 court attendants hurried forward to dress Mara in ceremonial robes of soft white silk, embroidered with glowing threads that matched the queen's own sash. As twilight deepened into night, Mara and Ciara stood side by side beneath the bioluminescent trees. Lanterns of delicate crystal hung from curling branches, casting gentle light over the gathered crowd. Mara felt her pulse quicken as the queen offered her a slender goblet filled with pale blue elixir. "Drink, and let truth guide us, Ciara," whispered Mara, raised the cup with both hands and drank. The cool liquid slid down her throat, and in that moment, she sensed the hopes and fears of an entire world reflected in the queen's gaze. When the ceremony concluded, Mara's head throbbed with wonder and newfound clarity. The crowd's soft applause echoed in her ears like distant rain. She glanced at Ciara, whose silver eyes shone with relief and something else Mara could not name. As the twin moons drifted across the sky, Mara understood that her choice had set their futures on a new path, one that would test her loyalty. Her courage and the quiet strength she carried within. Mara awoke before dawn, the courtyard bathed in a pale lavender glow. Court attendants guided her to a row of marble steps that led into a grove of bioluminescent trees. Their leaves shimmered in soft blue and green light, casting gentle patterns on the stone path. Ahead, Queen Ciara stood beside a carved altar, her silver hair braided with threads of moonlight. In the queen's hands rested a delicate chalice and 2 woven circlets, 4 herself and 1 for Mara. The air was still, and every breath felt sacred. Mara's heart thumped as she stepped forward. The white silk robes she wore whispered against her boots. She could feel the weight of every witness. Illyrian nobles, healers, and farmers lined the grove's edge, their silver eyes bright with hope. Mara remembered the queen's words from the night before. This ritual would bind their strengths and grant healing power to the colony below. She glanced at Ciara, whose calm expression belied the storm of grief lingering in her eyes. Mara offered a small nod. The queen's lips curved in a quiet smile. At the altar, an attendant poured pale blue elixir into each chalice. The liquid glowed faintly, as if containing starlight itself. Ciara spoke first, her voice clear and melodic. She recited ancient vows in Illyrian tongue words about loyalty, compassion, and unity. Mara listened, each syllable unfolding. Warmth in her chest. Then it was Mara's turn. She repeated the vows in her own language, her voice trembling at first but growing steady. She promised to stand beside the queen with courage, to honor the people of Alaris, and to share her own strength. When the vows ended, Ciara held Mara's gaze. A hush fell over the grove. Then the queen lifted her chalice to Mara's lips. "Drink," she said softly. Mara drank first. The elixir tasted cool and sweet, like a memory of spring rain. She felt a gentle pulse spread from her lips to her heart, as if a new rhythm had joined her own. Ciara drank next, and Mara watched as the queen's posture relaxed, grief lines softening into hope. The crowd exhaled in unison, as though they had been holding their breath for years. Next came the circlets. Ciara placed the silver crown on her own brow with reverence, and lifted the matching band for Mara. The circlet was light, almost weightless, engraved with tiny symbols of stars and waves. As it settled on Mara's hair, she felt a faint tingle at her temples. The queen reached out and touched Mara's hand, and in that moment, Mara sensed more than warmth. She felt Ciara's sorrow, her longing for companionship, and her fierce love for her people. At the same time, Ciara seemed to sense Mara's resolve and care for others. A murmur of approval rose from the assembly. Lanterns hanging among the trees glowed brighter, as though responding to their bond. Mara looked at the queen, whose silver eyes glittered with tears that were not of sadness but of release. For the first time since her consort's death, Ciara seemed unburdened by loneliness. Mara's chest tightened with emotion. She realized that this ritual had changed more than their legal status, it had opened both their hearts. After the ceremony, attendants ushered Mara and Ciara to a low stone bench by the lake. Fireflies drifted over the water, reflecting like stars dancing on liquid glass. Neither spoke at first. Mara felt the rhythm of the circlet's magic in her mind, a gentle hum that matched the queen's heartbeat. Finally, Ciara reached over and rested her hand on Mara's knee. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice trembling with gratitude. Mara offered a reassuring smile, her own eyes bright with unshed tears. As the morning sun began to rise, the grove filled with soft light and the promise of a new day. The ritual was complete, but Mara knew their journey together was only beginning. Bound by vows and shared strength, the human pilot and the alien queen stepped forward side by side, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead for the sake of Alaris and for the bond growing between them. Mara woke to soft sunlight sparkling through tall crystal windows. She dressed in the white silk robes, still marked by silver threads from the ceremony. Outside her chamber, a gentle knock sounded. A young aide bowed and spoke in quiet Illyrian. "Your partner awaits for the morning council." Mara nodded, smoothing her hair before following the aide through winding corridors lined with living vines. Every wall glowed faintly where the plants touched, and the air smelled sweet, like distant rain. In the grand hall, Queen Ciara stood before a curved dais of pale stone. Around her, officials and citizens gathered, farmers with weathered hands, scholars carrying notepads of holographic text, and healers in robes of green. All turned as Mara entered. Heat flushed her cheeks, but Ciara offered a reassuring smile. Mara stepped beside the queen and raised her chin in greeting. The crowd bowed low, then pressed forward with urgent questions. First, farmers spoke of the silver grass failing to bloom. Mara listened, watching the queen's soft expression turn grave. Drawing on her travels among diverse worlds, Mara suggested new soil mixtures and watering routines she'd seen on distant colonies. She spoke calmly, using simple words that even Alarians learning Common could follow. Ciara repeated Mara's idea in the native tongue, and murmurs of approval rippled through the crowd. The farmer's eyes shone with gratitude, and he clasped his palms together to honor both queen and partner. Next came a scholar with a flickering holotablet, showing shifting patterns of energy flow in the palace power cores. The scholar feared overload risks during the next solar alignment. Mara leaned forward, studying the glowing map. She pointed out a less-used secondary conduit that could relieve pressure, describing its human world equivalent in plain terms. Ciara voiced the plan to the engineer standing at her side, and within moments, schematics were sent down to the vaults below. The engineer offered a deep bow to Mara, who returned it with a shy smile. After the council, Mara and Ciara stepped into a lush garden courtyard. Exotic flowers glowed in shades of blue and pink. The queen touched a blossom gently, then looked at Mara. "Your ideas bring hope," she said softly. Mara brushed a strand of hair behind her ear. "I only speak from what I know," she replied, "but your people deserve every chance to thrive." The queen nodded, her silver eyes reflecting sunlight like twin stars as midday approached. Mara joined the royal kitchen for a simple lunch of roasted tubers and sweet fruit. Alarian cooks invited her to taste local herbs, and Mara laughed at the surprising bursts of citrus flavor. Ciara watched, amusement shining in her gaze. When Mara offered the queen a bite, their hands brushed, and Mara felt a warmth spread through her chest, realized how comfortable she had become. In this alien world in the afternoon, Ciara led Mara to the meditation terrace overlooking the lake. The surface was so still, it mirrored sky and marble towers perfectly. Ciara closed her eyes and inhaled slowly. "Tell me of Earth," she whispered. Mara sat beside her, describing forests of green and oceans vast enough to swallow the horizon. She spoke of gentle rains and songs sung around campfires. Ciara listened, fascinated by the human world's beauty. Mara's words painted vivid landscapes in the queen's mind, and the two shared a quiet moment of peaceful wonder. Before dusk, Mara returned to her quarters to prepare for the evening's audience with visiting healers. She paused at the window, looking out over Alaris's glowing gardens and twin moons rising side by side. Thoughts of home tugged at her heart, but she recalled the farmer's grateful smile and the engineer's respectful bow. Here she was more than a pilot. She was a partner bringing strength to a lost people. With a breath of resolve, she turned from the window. Tomorrow held new challenges, but Mara knew she would meet each one with courage, hope, and the quiet power that had first drawn Queen Ciara to her side. Mara stood in the palace's bright kitchen, its quartz walls warm under high crystal lamps. Rows of copper pots and pans gleamed on polished counters. Queen Ciara watched with quiet curiosity as Mara arranged simple ingredients: potatoes, onions, garlic, and a handful of earthy herbs from Mara's ship stores. The queen's silver eyes widened when she saw the rough wooden cutting board. "On Earth, we call this a stew," Mara explained, chopping vegetables with steady hands. Ciara tilted her head, her braided hair catching light, and nodded softly. As the onions sizzled and steam rose, Mara guided Ciara's graceful fingers to stir the pot. The queen hesitated at first, her touch delicate, but soon she smiled at the earthy scent. Mara added broth and herbs, then covered the pot and lowered the heat. The two sat at a low stone table, sharing crusty bread and small cups of cooling tea. Mara offered the first bite of stew to Ciara, whose lips curved into a delighted smile at the warm, rich flavor. "It reminds me of morning fires on my homeworld," Mara said. Ciara closed her eyes, tasting memories in the human spice. Later, the queen led Mara to the Hall of Echoes, where Alarian musicians played dream songs on crystal flutes. The notes drifted through the vaulted chamber like soft rainfall. Ciara pressed Mara's hand and, in broken common, whispered, "Music heals heart." Mara felt tears prick her eyes as the song wove around them, touching memories of brave moments and shared sorrow. She watched the queen's silver eyes glisten, and in that moment they were not pilot and monarch, but two souls finding comfort in art. After the performance, Ciara invited Mara to try the flutes. The small crystal instrument trembled in Mara's palms. She lifted it to her lips and blew a gentle note. The sound was strange and lovely, like wind through glass. The queen applauded softly, guiding Mara's fingers along the flute's carved grooves. Together, they played a simple melodia, human lullaby, transformed by Illyrian harmony. Their notes mingled until the hall seemed to glow from within. That evening, in the moonlit garden, lanterns drifted above beds of bioluminescent flowers. Jara showed Mara how to gather petals that folded open at her touch. The queen gently pressed a glowing blossom to Mara's palm. "These petals share hope," she said. Mara felt warmth seep into her skin, and she offered a petal to the queen. Their fingers brushed, and Mara sensed the queen's grief soften into hope. They laughed as the flowers pulsed softly, as if celebrating their shared moment. To repay the queen's kindness, Mara taught Ciara a simple human dance. Under the twin moons, Mara moved in small steps, guiding Ciara's hands to match her rhythm. At first, the queen's movements were hesitant, but Mara's gentle encouragement helped her relax. Soon they twirled together, their laughter echoing. Among the marble columns, palace attendants paused to watch, smiles spreading across their faces. For a time, the court forgot protocol and joined the dance, their footsteps weaving a tapestry of joy. After the dancing ended, Ciara and Mara sat by the crystal lake, its surface reflecting starlight. The queen drew a slender sketchbook from her robes and offered it to Mara. Inside were elegant drawings of Alaris's majestic forests and soaring mountains. Mara traced the delicate lines with her finger, admiring the queen's talent.
Ow.
Then Mara opened her own small notebook and sketched the palace's curved towers against the night sky. Ciara leaned over to study the drawing, her breath warm on Mara's shoulder. In silence, they exchanged and something deeper passed between them. As dawn approached, Mara walked Ciara back to the palace doors. The sky was pale silver and the air held promise. "Thank you for teaching me your songs and your stories," Mara said softly. Ciara placed a hand over her heart. "And thank you for sharing your world," she replied. Their eyes met in a moment of quiet understanding, two different beings, united by curiosity, compassion, and the simple beauty of shared experience. In that gentle bond, both found a glimmer of home. Mara woke to urgent whispers drifting through the corridors. Outside, dark clouds swirled across Alaris's twin suns, turning the sky a deep copper. Servants hurried past her door, faces pale with worry. She joined Queen Ciara on the balcony, where the air crackled with distant thunder. "A solar storm is coming," Ciara said, her voice tight with concern. "Our energy grid cannot withstand it." Mara's heart pounded. She knew that if the grid failed, hospitals would go dark, and homes would freeze in the cold night to come. Without hesitation, Mara gathered engineers and technicians in the palace courtyard. The gathered crowd, humans and Illyrians alike, stood under flickering lanterns, listening as Mara outlined her plan. She pointed to a central tower where the main power conduits met. "We need to reroute energy through the secondary lines," she said in clear, simple language. "It will lighten the load on the core systems when the storm hits. We work together, step by step." As she spoke, Ciara stood nearby, silver robes catching the lantern glow, offering strength with her steady presence. Teams raced through the palace vaults to reach the ancient conduits. Mara led a group into narrow tunnels beneath the marble floors. The passages glowed faintly from bioluminescent moss lining the walls. Each footfall echoed, and every breath felt heavy in the close air. Mara knelt beside a massive control panel, its levers etched with alien symbols. She explained each switch to her human and Illyrian engineers, translating between languages when needed. When a young Illyrian engineer hesitated, Mara placed her hand on his shoulder. "You can do this," she said softly. He nodded, courage shining in his silver eyes. Above ground, Ciara coordinated from the palace balcony.
Ow.
She addressed the citizens gathered below, her voice carrying over the wind. Trust in Mara's guidance, she called. We have courage and unity. This storm will test us, but we will protect each other. The crowd cheered, a roar of hope that rose against the dark sky. Mara heard the sound below and felt a surge of warmth. She realized that the bond formed in ritual had grown into a real partnership, two leaders, standing together for their people. Back in the tunnels, alarms sounded as the first solar flares struck the moon's energy shields. Sparks flew from overhead conduits, and a hiss of steam filled the air. Mara's team worked with urgent focus, tightening valves and resetting circuit breakers. Sweat beaded on Mara's forehead as she guided each action. When a conduit overheated, she grabbed a coolant hose and helped reroute the flow. The engineers looked to her brave, calm, decisive. In that moment, Mara felt more than a pilot. She was a beacon of hope for Alaris. After tense hours, the teams emerged from the tunnels into the courtyard. The sky overhead crackled with bright, orange streaks, but the palace shields held steady. Ciara met Mara at the steps, relief flooding her silver eyes. She reached out and embraced Mara, her robes glowing softly in the storm's light. You have saved us, Ciara whispered. Mara's chest swelled with pride and emotion. Tears blurred her vision as she nodded. Round them, the colony erupted. In cheers, voices lifted in gratitude. As the storm passed and the skies cleared, the people of Alaris gathered around the lake for a celebration. Lanterns floated on the water's surface, carrying messages of thanks and hope. Mara and Ciara walked side by side, hands brushing but not quite touching. Neither spoke at first. They shared a quiet joy that needed no words. When Ciara finally spoke, "You brought light in our darkest hour." Mara smiled through tears. "We did it together," she replied softly. That night, Alaris slept under calm skies, its people safe, and its energy grid restored. In the palace, Mara and Ciara stood on the balcony, looking out over the glowing gardens and twin moons. In the gentle silence, they felt the bond between them grow deeper. For Mara, the crisis had proven her strength. For Ciara, it had revealed the true power of partnership and friendship. And as they turned back toward the palace, both knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them side by side. Mara awoke before dawn, the sky a soft lavender haze. She dressed in her white silk robes and walked to the palace balcony, where a chill wind drifted over the marble. Queen Ciara waited, her silver hair loose around her shoulders. Celebration had ended hours ago, but Ciara's eyes held a restless light. Mara offered a gentle nod. "Good morning," she said. Ciara brushed a strand of hair from her face. "You leave at sunrise," the queen said, her voice quiet but firm. Mara's heart tightened. The ritual week had passed and protocol demanded that Mara return to her ship. They walked together through the empty courtyard, their footsteps echoing on the stone floor. Lanterns flickered in their stands, casting long shadows. Ciara spoke without turning. "My people follow our laws, but my heart is torn." Mara felt the weight of those words. She thought of her fleet waiting beyond the horizon, of missions, unfinished and colleagues counting on her. Yet she also remembered the hope in Ciara's eyes, the unity they had forged, and the trust of a whole world resting on their bond. At the palace gates they paused beneath a carved arch of moonstone. The sun's first rays painted the sky in pale gold. Queen Ciara's shoulders trembled. She reached for Mara's hand, her touch warm against the rising cold. "I am expected to honor the alliance," Ciara said, voice thick with emotion. "But I cannot bear to let you go." Tears shimmered in the queen's silver eyes. Mara swallowed, her own eyes misting. "I want to stay," she whispered, "but I can't abandon my duties." The words landed between them like a stone in clear water. Rippling with pain, Ciara stepped closer, her hand still holding Mara's. "Your duty is noble," she said, "but our bond means more than ceremony. You have given us life, hope, and strength." Mara pressed her palm to the queen's, feeling a pulse that matched her own heartbeat. Memories of the storm, the laughter in the gardens, and the healing songs filled Mara's mind. She realized that duty and the bond they shared, did not have to be enemies. Perhaps there was another way. A courtier approached, bowing low. "Your Majesty, the shuttle awaits." Ciara straightened, regal once more. She looked at Mara, courage and sorrow mingling in her gaze. "Go," she said softly, "but promise me you will return." "I promise," she said. Out. Ow. Their hands slipped apart as Mara climbed into the shuttle's open hatch. Ciara watched from the threshold, her figure framed by the rising sun. Inside the shuttle, Mara settled into the pilot's seat. She glanced back one last time. Queen Ciara stood alone on the palace steps, silver hair glowing in dawn's light. Mara gripped the controls. "Goodbye, my queen," she whispered. Ciara raised her hand in farewell, her voice carried on the wind. "Safe travels, Mara Linovic. Our bond endures." The shuttle engines hummed, and Mara lifted off. As Alaris's twin moons faded behind her, Mara felt both sorrow and hope. She carried with her the queen's trust and the promise of return. Knowing that duty and the heart's true calling could walk together on the path ahead, Mara's shuttle glided through the star-streaked night, carrying her away from the world she had helped save. As the engines hummed, she closed her eyes and recalled the soft glow of Alaris's twin moons, the warmth in Queen Ciara's silver eyes, and the echo of the dream songs in the Hall of Echoes. Home to humanity lay ahead, but Mara felt her heart still tethered to the pale lavender skies of the alien moon. She pressed a hand to her chest, feeling the faint pulse of the circlet still resting, their quiet reminder that her promise endured across the void. When Mara touched down on her home station, familiar faces rushed forward, friends, fellow pilots and engineers who cheered her safe return. Their smiles were bright and their voices full of questions about the storm, the people she had met and the rituals she had performed. Mara greeted them with gentle words, sharing simple stories of glowing gardens and shared dances under moonlight. Yet as she described Alaris's bioluminescent trees and healing songs, her friends nodded politely, unable to imagine life beyond human worlds. Mara felt a touch of sadness. She realized that only she truly understood the bond she had formed, and how that bond had changed her forever. In the days that followed, Mara resumed her routine supply runs and maintenance missions. She climbed into the cockpit each morning, calibrated her instruments, and plotted courses to distant colonies. But her thoughts kept drifting back to Ciara's quiet grace and the strength of their partnership. Late at night, Mara would sit by the viewport, watching unfamiliar stars and wondering what the Queen was doing beneath Alaris's violet sky. The shuttle's hum became a lullaby of longing, and Mara often found her hand unconsciously resting on the small datapad where she had saved SYARA's last message. One evening, the datapad chimed. Mara's heart leaped as she read the Queen's words. A simple greeting, a sketch of new flowers blooming in the palace gardens, and an invitation. "Return when your path guides you," Ciara wrote. "For our people still need the light you bring." Tears filled Mara's eyes as she typed her reply. Thanks for the greeting, news of her safe journey, and a vow to come back as soon as duty allowed. The message sent, Mara felt a surge of hope. She realized that their bond was not confined by ceremony or distance. It lived in every promise and every word exchanged across the stars. As weeks passed, Mara sought ways to bridge the worlds she cared for. She proposed a new trade route between human outposts and Alaris, one that would share medical supplies, food stocks, and cultural knowledge. She outlined plans for joint scientific research on bioluminescent flora and new energy. Grid designs borrowed from Alaris's ancient technology. Her colleagues listened with growing interest, impressed by the practical benefits and the chance to learn. From an alien civilization that valued compassion as deeply as they valued progress, Mara's ideas won approval, and soon a small delegation of human engineers prepared to travel with her next time. When the day came to leave again, Mara packed not only tools and data pads, but also gifts for Ciara. A bundle of earth-grown seeds promising green forests, and a human-made music box playing a lullaby she had sketched into Alarian melody. She felt both excitement and nervousness as she boarded the shuttle, knowing that this journey mattered more than any supply run. As the engines roared to life, Mara glanced once more at the human station she called home and thought of the pale lavender glow awaiting her. Through the viewport, Mara saw Alaris growing larger, world healed by unity and strengthened by their bond. The twin moons rose like sentinels welcoming her return. She breathed deeply, filling her lungs with memories of laughter in the palace, gardens and quiet confidences shared by the crystal lake. When the shuttle touched down, Queen Ciara stood on the steps, her silver hair catching the starlight. Mara's heart swelled as she heard the Queen's soft voice. "Welcome back, Mara Linovic. Together, we light the darkest night." Dottie. By side, Pilot and Queen walked into the courtyard, hands reaching for each other. The people of Alaris cheered, lanterns floating in the air like fireflies set free. In that moment, Mara knew that her true home spanned to worlds and that wherever duty called, she would answer with courage, compassion, and the promise of their enduring partnership.